Chairman, and Chairman Lowenthal and Ranking Member Stauber, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for this opportunity to testify this morning. My name is Nick Loris, and I'm the Vice President of Public Policy at the Conservative Coalition for Climate Solutions. We are a think tank that focuses on empowering entrepreneurs and innovators to deliver affordable, reliable energy, solve environmental challenges, and reduce the risks of climate change. And with my time today, I'd like to make three brief observations. The first is that with any policy or regulation, Congress and agencies should appropriately weigh the costs and the benefits. And regarding prohibitions of oil and gas development on federal lands, the economic costs significantly outweigh the climate benefits. More oil and gas extraction on federal lands would have minimal climate impact because these activities represent a small percentage of global greenhouse gas emissions. According to 2019 Bureau of Land Management data, oil and gas development on public lands is responsible for 6.5% of total greenhouse gas emissions and just 0.7% of global emissions. However, these emissions numbers by themselves do not provide policymakers with the full context of the climate impact from energy production on federal lands. A useful tool for doing so is the Model for the Assessment of Greenhouse Gas-Induced Climate Change, or MAGIC model. This is a model that was developed at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, and it quantifies the temperature impact and sea level changes from increases and decreases in greenhouse gas emissions. Running this MAGIC model and inputting emissions increases from greater oil and gas supplies, which is defined by the U.S. Energy Information Administration as a 50% increase above the baseline case or reference case, this would only increase global temperatures by 0.03 of a degree Celsius by the year 2100. Similarly, eliminating coal, oil, and natural gas extraction on federal lands would have minimal climate benefits, resulting in only 0.08 of a degree Celsius of averted warming by the turn of the century. However, restrictions on energy development would come at significant cost to consumers, to Western states, and to the broader economy. Energy production on public lands is an important jobs creator, and the revenues are a critical funding source for schools, hospitals, tribes, and conservation efforts. While economic diversification is sensible for states, the fiscal and economic costs of leasing moratoriums could cost Western states hundreds of billions of dollars. According to University of Wyoming economist Timothy Considine, a leasing moratorium could result in $372 billion in lost investment, $478 billion in lost productivity, and $114 billion in fiscal losses over a 20-year period. The cumulative job losses for the 8 Western states Considine analyzed would reach more than 340,000 by the year 2040. Secondly, policymakers should consider the unintended environmental consequences that will inevitably occur because of emissions leakage if the federal government restricts development on public lands. Production would shift to private and state-owned lands and would shift overseas where the environmental standards are not as rigorous. One analysis from Resources for the Future estimates that the emissions leakage could be as high as 73%. Furthermore, reductions in natural gas supply could increase prices and result in a switch back to coal, or result in utilities keeping their existing coal-fired generation online longer than they otherwise would. The end result may be a much smaller than anticipated reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, or potentially a net increase in emissions. Third, there are many productive ways to reduce emissions from activities on federal lands. For instance, integrating natural climate solutions to remediation and abandoned mine sites could minimize environmental liabilities and reduce emissions. Improving soil health, planting more trees, and eradicating invasive species could provide opportunities for economic development, job creation, and also sequestering more carbon dioxide. Moreover, expediting permitting that maintains environmental safeguards and inputs from communities would expand low carbon and zero emissions technologies on public, state, and private lands. Global decarbonization will not just come from cost reduction in clean energy sources and technologies, but efficient and scalable deployment. In conclusion, affordable, dependable power is essential for our well-being and standards of living. When Americans pay more for electricity and at the pump, fewer dollars are available for healthcare, for clothes, and for food. Policies that drive energy prices higher are regressive, disproportionately harming older populations, low-income families, and communities of color. At the same time, climate change is real, presents real risks to communities, and demands attention. Climate change is a global challenge, and expanding economic freedom in the United States and around the world can increase prosperity while reducing the risks of human-induced warming. By breaking down barriers to innovation, investment, and deployment, and employing a whole of society and a whole of markets approach, the US can continue to demonstrate that strong economic growth and emissions reductions are not mutually exclusive. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.